Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating mystery. Have you ever wondered why young Japanese children seem to be perfectly calm even in overwhelming, crowded spaces, while kids in Western countries might have an absolute full-blown meltdown over, well, a seemingly minor thing? When I first dug into this, it completely shifted my perspective on child behavior, and I honestly think it's going to do the exact same for you. Let's explore this together. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at two completely different kids. Then we'll find what we call the cure from the root. And after that, we'll break down three highly actionable habits. We've got setting a routine, giving change warnings, and creating empty moments. Finally, we'll wrap the whole thing up with a really practical 7-day challenge. Section 1. Two completely different kids. Let's set the stage. Imagine a Tokyo train right during rush hour. It's noisy, it's totally packed, it's exhausting. Yet right in the middle of all that chaos is a Japanese child, completely calm, no drama at all. Now, flip the script. Picture a perfectly safe, completely comfortable kitchen in a Western home. Suddenly, a child triggers a massive, explosive 45-second meltdown simply because their cereal happens to be the wrong color. Or maybe there's a tragically placed wrinkle in their sock. The existential dread of the wrong-colored cup is real, right? But it's wild. Why does a highly stressful environment yield a calm child, while a totally safe environment yields absolute chaos? Section 2, Cure from the Root. Let's move to and see how this builds, because it's a fundamental philosophical shift. You see, there is a deep difference between these two parenting cultures. The Western approach to parenting is usually quite reactive. The focus is on stopping a tantrum once it's already blazing. It's essentially treating the symptoms, like you're desperately fighting a fire. But the Japanese approach, they ask a completely different question. They ask, wait, why did this anger even start in the first place? They address the root cause hours before a tantrum ever happens, ensuring that the fire literally never ignites to begin with. And this brilliantly illustrates a crucial biological truth. A meltdown is not a child intentionally misbehaving or just being naughty. It is, quite literally, an explosion of a developing nervous system that has just been burdened with way too much fatigue, hunger, or sensory stimulation. When we try to discipline a meltdown in the moment, we're actually fighting a biological reaction, not a behavioral choice. So the real question becomes, how do we prevent that overload in the first place? That brings us to Section 3, First Habit. Set routine. Now, to an adult, a strict routine might sound incredibly boring, but for a developing child, it is the ultimate source of deep emotional security. A child's brain is constantly trying to figure out this massive, confusing world. So instead of imposing rigid top-down control, creating a rhythmic loop of safety gives them immense peace. It's found in the simplest things. Waking up at the exact same time, eating at the same table, or even saying goodbye at the door with the exact same words and the exact same wave of the hand. Having a predictable rule for evening bath time or story time means the child always knows exactly what comes next. The vital takeaway here is that these gentle, predictable rhythms actually protect the child's nervous system. Without a routine, a child's brain is constantly scanning the environment for threats or surprises. They get stuck in this draining, high-stress alert mode. But a predictable routine turns that alert system off entirely, which saves massive amounts of their cognitive energy. Moving on to Section 4, Second Habit. Change warning. Adult and child brains process sudden shifts completely differently. For us, abruptly turning off the TV to leave the house, it's no big deal. We just shift gears instantly. But a child's brain simply doesn't have those gears developed yet. When you make an unexpected, abrupt change, like suddenly ending a game, it acts like a little earthquake inside their head. These sudden shocks, these little earthquakes, are actually the triggers for all those dramatic meltdowns. So how do we stop those mental earthquakes? Well, we can use a highly logical countdown protocol. Step 1, physically get down to their eye level and make real eye contact. Don't just yell from the kitchen. Step 2, give them a loving 5-minute warning before an activity is going to end. Step 3 is a 3-minute reminder, just letting them mentally prepare to let go. And finally, Step 4, a 1-minute warning. By the time the transition actually happens, there's zero shock. They're completely 100% ready for it, which leads us to Section 5. Third habit, empty moments. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this single number right here, 15. It might look incredibly simple, but it represents one of the most critical missing pieces in modern parenting.
That number stands for 15 minutes of empty moments every single day. We're talking 15 minutes of complete, total silence. No screens, no background music, no learning apps, no tasks, just nothing. Now, to us adults, this might sound incredibly boring, maybe even a waste of time. But this silence is absolutely essential maintenance for their brain. Children take in massive amounts of new information every single day. They desperately need silence to just process it all. If a child is constantly stimulated, playing, watching screens, learning, their brain is always on. Think of it exactly like physical exercise. If you overwork a muscle without ever resting it, what happens? You get a painful cramp. The exact same thing happens to a developing brain. An overworked brain develops a psychological muscle cramp, which eventually explodes into a severe meltdown. Those 15 empty minutes are the essential stretching and resting that prevent the cramp entirely.
And finally, Section 6, 7-Day Challenge. So, the crucial point is putting this into practice. Let's quickly recap the tools you now have. First, set up predictable daily routine for biological safety. Second, use the countdown protocol to prevent those gear-shifting shocks. And third, dedicate just 15 minutes of empty, silent time every day to let their brain rest. Remember, these aren't reactive punishments. These are proactive tools of deep, intentional care. So I want to leave you with a real challenge. Which of these 3 root cause habits will you adopt for the next 7 days? You absolutely do not have to do all 3 at once. Just pick one. It is truly amazing how just a single, small step in addressing the root cause can completely transform the peace and harmony of your entire family's day. Give it a try, see the results, and watch the chaos turn into calm. Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer, and keep learning.